Hello, everyone, and welcome to Innovative Conversations. We are so excited to have you join us for our inaugural episode, kind of kicking off this podcast, one of hopefully will be many. For years, our team members have wanted to offer a podcast as a way to explore deeper questions that are shaping leadership in organizations today. We know that our world is becoming even more complex day by day, and we're leading in spaces that are more challenging as we go forward. So we know that it's important ever to share ideas, ask the hard questions, and really delve into some of these real world challenges that you all are experiencing as leaders, both individually with your teams and across your organization. So I'm going to be your host, Lori Kier. I'm the CEO of Innovative Connections. We're a consulting firm really dedicated to helping organizations achieve higher level of organizational effectiveness in any number of spaces. From coaching, both at the individual and team level, to change management, to team development, strategic planning, culture work, kind of the whole gamut of services. You can find out more information about that at www.innovativeconnectionsinc.com. So our vision is really to kind of boldly elevate voices in action for an emerging future. And a future that is emerging even more quickly every day and changing every day. So it's our hope that this really does provide a forum that is an opportunity to, like I said, kind of delve into some of those pieces. As you get a little more acquainted with us and with the podcast, you're going to see that some of our episodes will be in person. Some of them will be virtual. For myself, I've really been privileged to work and lead as a consultant, a business psychologist, a researcher, and an author for probably more years than I want to admit, but at least 30 at this point. And what I will say is that we've got an amazing team, and our team members and myself are really committed to leadership. We're committed to the people within organizations, recognizing that it's that space where work happens, where transformation occurs, and where life comes full circle. So again, in each episode, we really want to bring you these thoughtful conversations. We'll bring in leaders, we'll bring in team members, practitioners, and experts who are really going to help us think more deeply about the future of work and how we take some of these really challenging issues and kind of move them forward. So today, I want to introduce Stacey Brandon and Kristen Truman Allen as our guests. I've had the opportunity to know Kristen for quite some time, and Kristen's got a doctorate degree in human development. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Excellent. And has just worked in a variety of spaces with leaders, as a leader and with leaders. Stacey comes with an expertise in education, has done a lot of racial equity work, which is where you and I first had an opportunity to meet. Both Stacey and Kristen consult with Innovative Connections, and so I've had an opportunity to partner with you in that space as well. So thank you both for joining today. I'm ready for some authentic conversation and see where we land. So what do you guys think? Are you ready to jump in?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I want to start with just a little bit of framework because of the nature of the topic, of course. So I think what we can probably all agree to, and hopefully our audience can agree to as well, is that we are definitely living in a political environment that's polarizing and controversial. Wherever we stand on a political spectrum, it's just a lot more polarizing than it's ever been. And one of the things that I found myself contemplating, which is why this topic is felt very relevant to me, is we spend 40 to 50% of our time in the workplace, and the things that happen to us outside of the workplace impact us. And when there's not a space in the workplace to be able to express our humanity, it doesn't even have to be the issues, but to express our humanity, where does that leave us? Where does that leave leaders as they're trying to motivate people and engage and all of those things when all of those elements can't come to play? So that was kind of the foundation of what got me curious about this topic. Not to mention some of the other events that were happening across the country in the last 4, 5, 6, 10 years. I mean, this has been something that's been ongoing for some time. So what I want for today is we're not going to talk about political positions, ideologies. We're not going to really kind of argue in favor or opposition of any given political issue. So if that's what you're thinking, we're not going there. Mm-hmm. What we really want to start to explore is, what does it mean to hold the tension of what we're experiencing in the sociopolitical environment, and be able to recognize that those things touch our values, and that we still have to come to work and bring our humanity forward. So that's my thought. So let me just pause there. And then there's a couple of statistics that I'd like to read that might kind of set the context of the conversation as well. So any thoughts about just that kind of framework as we start the conversation?
Not specifically. I feel like setting the stage around an open conversation is really important.
this is definitely a topic that's coming up all the time now. How do you leave? In the past, you had to leave your identity and all the things that make up who you are at the door. And what we're seeing is for people to fully embrace who they are and be productive in an environment, in their work environment, they can't leave that at the door any longer. So there's none of this compartmentalization. So this is a great topic to talk about right now.
And when there is, what is the consequence of that?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, here's a couple of data points that might just kind of start to spawn the dialogue. So there was an HRCI report that found that many organizations are still kind of unsure of how to handle the political conversations. And I'm sure we can all appreciate that. There's this sense of, like, I don't know what to do with it, and so let's just not talk about it. That's not at all. In one survey, they shared that 36% of organizations discourage political discussion, while 44% said that political discussion should be allowed but not encouraged. So either way, we're looking at what is that, about 80% that say we don't actually want to have political conversation in the workplace. So again, it's this tension. I think it's important to name this tension because what I feel like is that there's this potentially this ability to say, we don't want to say let's never talk about this, but what we're also saying is that we don't know how to talk about this. So there's all of these polarities and a whole host of different arenas. So there was another kind of piece of data that came out of that same study that said that 74% of HR professionals said the political differences among employees are making their responsibilities harder. And 59% of those said that political tension has affected their relationships with clients or customers. So I think all of these dimensions, and we see it quite frequently when we look at organizations that have taken a political stance in each direction, there's consequences of some of those pieces.
I think for me, it was the question of why people stay silent.
Yes, let's go there.
And for many reasons, that's kind of an easy answer. Fear, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to exactly offend anybody. But silence communicates something. So I think I get that. I've been fearful in situations before, not wanting to hurt someone's feelings, harm them in any way. And my silence still communicated something in that situation.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk about that.
Well, and I'm wondering too if we start with the fear piece, because I think that is the reason why we don't have the conversations. I think we're afraid that the conversation will get out of control and we won't know how to manage it when it does. Any number of reasons. What do you?
Yeah, thing in kind of in tandem with that, the thing that stood out for me the most was the question around what are we actually fearful of having the conversation? What do we actually think is going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think there's some physical safety that could be involved. I mean, it's easy to say, I might lose my job or I lose some security in that way. But even there's an underlying fear around that. Like, what does that actually mean? Yeah. Because there's those identity pieces, connection, safety, and the safety can actually be physical safety, especially if we're talking about the political pieces, but also the social pieces around identity and LGBTQAI plus communities and how people are expressing themselves and what gets honored and not honored.
So you talked about the silence communicates. So let's talk a little bit about what that communicates. When people are silent, what do you think the message is that their employees hear?
For one, that they're not being heard. And there's an assumption in that. I think that employees then feel that things are not safe. We can't talk about this here. So I can't bring my full being into the space. Even when you think about the LGBTQI community, I'm an educator in the past and over again, and then worked in the equity office. I would hear from our teachers, just even the freedom to put up a picture of their partner could cause some type of, and very much physical harm. And just the idea that I, as a cisgender woman, I can put my husband up, my kids, all of those things. And for them, just even showing the person they love. Or I remember working with teachers who were getting married and couldn't share that they were getting married or how excited they were.
Yeah.
Taking time off was often viewed as because they did not want to reveal who they are, who they were.
Yeah.
So because their employee was silent about it when they would explain,
Yeah.
because they didn't know what to say, maybe they didn't agree or believe in same-sex marriages or whatever, the message over and over to them was, I can't be who I
Yeah.
am.
And we hold back the
Yes.
consequences to it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Lots of stress for them.
In your work with racial equity, where do you see this show up as well?
Well, personally, as you know, as a Black woman, I personally remember just over and over again, even in the school district that I was in. I mean, you can't get around the fact that you can look at me and see that I'm Black. But there were times when I was silent about my positions, what I believed should happen for Black children, because if I was the only one on staff, then it was always the assumption that, of course, she's going to think that way.
Yeah.
Or, of course, she's going to bring that forward.
But there wasn't a uniqueness in your belief. You were categorized.
We're not a monolith, right?
Yeah. Monolith, yeah.
Yes. And so because my principals sometimes did not know how to, especially when I first started about 40 years ago, have conversations about race, they were silent. So I also felt like I had to be silent in so many ways. But I do think it's a part of maybe generational as well, because I remember also growing up and my mother would always say, there are some things you just don't talk about in mixed company. And when she said that meant outside of this house, with people that look racially different from us, ethnically, culturally, all those things. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about race. We don't talk about religion.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
And probably now it's things like privilege and DEI, and I mean, there's this whole list of things that began to get added to that in the most recent past.
And it's all in the workplace.
Yes, yeah.
But to give people credit, they did not know how to talk about it with other folks that did not look like them, or they just didn't talk about it. So.
And that's probably the case even now. I mean, I don't know that people are malicious in not wanting to talk most of the time.
No.
There's just an inability to know how, and a fear, all the fears that we just explored.
Right, and that fear of maybe they don't know how, but they also don't want to get it wrong. They may have an intention of, I'm asking because I'm curious, but will you be upset by how I'm asking? Or that I don't have the right language, or that I
don't even know.
Right.
I think there's some times where we feel like it's not my job to educate you.
Right.
So get educated and then we'll talk.
So then there's this push-pull of intention versus how it could be, and where does the safety come in, which I think is the bottom line of this conversation, right? Like, how do we create the safety as leaders to be able to have the conversations and be messy about it, understanding that the intention is pure?
Love the word messy, and you hear that a lot. Like, can we just be messy with it? And I've heard you say that a number of times. It's making me think about this notion of psychological safety, and that's become such a prevalent concept in our workplaces. And yet, when we talk about psychological safety, we oftentimes actually don't address a lot of these variables that are so critical to our ability to feel psychologically safe in the workplace. So what does that mean? Are we just scratching the surface, and is that helpful? Or are we missing a deeper layer that's actually preventing it? Like, we're not actually getting to the root of what's testing our ability to create psychological safe environments.
When I think about organizations that I felt like they created a standard for psychological safety, I had the perception that they had a zero tolerance for anything that was disrespectful or not allowed to be messy. So regardless of what the beliefs were, there was a zero tolerance policy. So there has to be some boundary around what safety actually means, and for who, for everyone, not just safe for me, right? What are those guardrails? And what happens if I cross that line?
What that makes me think about too is those guardrails are shifting. We see those guardrails look different in various contexts, and we don't always know how they apply in our current situation, our current workplace. Because what the guardrails look like here look very different than maybe they look like when you're out in the grocery store or somewhere else.
Right.
I think it also depends on the topic too. because the whole concept of psychological safety is the idea that things are going to be uncomfortable. We are going to have the tension of discomfort around all types of topics. But there are certain topics that are really seriously can be harmful. And depending on your lived experience, what you bring to the space, by way of, geographically, what you've lived through, all those things, there's some deep-seated beliefs that come up in behaviors. And so when you are talking about those politically charged items, maybe immigration or birthright citizenship or DEI or any of those things, you're coming from an experience that you have lived. And although you may be feeling psychologically safe to talk about another topic, this is a topic that hits so deeply for so many of us that it may not. I think about even our teachers who are, don't have citizenship. And if they're in a space and they're talking about that, are they then going to feel psychologically safe to have this conversation, knowing that they may be an immigrant that hasn't had their documentation completely completed, and what kind of vulnerability it brings up in them to have that conversation.
I love this notion of lived experience, and my guess is we'll take that a lot of different directions in our conversation. It makes me think too, does our lived experience just intersect differently around these issues? Does it cut more deeply through these types of issues than others, which makes it more difficult to communicate and discuss? Or even share, like there's a lot of, not even vulnerability, but the disclosure. Sometimes we haven't even worked through our own lived experience ourselves. So to disclose it and have others help understand it is not even possible sometimes.
We use the language of charged. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Like how charged am I based on my lived experience? And even if we're thinking cellularly, what's going on from a charge perspective and the polarities and atoms and like the details of that, like the bigger the charge on both ends, right, then what's happening in the polarity. And if there's the vulnerability, but there's only so far I can go. I can be really safe in this conversation. It's neutral. The charge is neutral. But now once I'm charged, you might not even know I'm charged and think it's neutral. But now I have a reaction in a way that is going to get in the way of my ability to listen completely, be open completely, speak in a way that you can hear me, and I'm not just over emotional or expressing myself in a way that can't be heard.
I love the metaphor that you used around charge and polarities, and that you're right. Even in all context of our natural world, the bigger the charge, the more polarities can get created from it.
And it makes me think about brain research, right? And how our brains react when we are charged, we're triggered. Something is threatening to us. A conversation can be threatening based on a previous experience having the same conversation or a lived experience with whatever the topic is. And when you get that amygdala just firing, right? And you're not able to access. I know I sometimes when I'm trying to explain this to people, especially because I do some restorative conversation, and people are predisposed to already go at the other person before they even enter a room and try to say, well, that's because your brain has been wired. Now, when you see this person and you know they're going to trigger this, you're already ready, charged. Right? How that brain also gets a part of this and is wired to already try to flee, have fright, flight,
freeze. The whole fear response. And we automatically, anytime we're in fear, whether it's a big fear or little fear, defensiveness is our response. Huge coping mechanism. Just for clarity, talk to people about restorative work, just so that everybody has a sense of what that is.
I call it restorative work. People in the past have called it conflict mediation, negotiation, those types of things. I just like the idea of when there are parties that are fighting. It comes from restorative justice and from the justice world of having two parties really restore what was lost, a relationship. But it's not about just finding solutions. It's about what is acknowledging the harm that has come.
That's actually worth underlining and highlighting. We have to acknowledge the harm.
Acknowledge the harm. So they both have to be willing parties to it, and then acknowledge the harm. But can we get to a conversation that is as a solution that is as right can be for both of us?
Yeah.
And that requires some restoring.
I feel like there's probably informally a lot of restorative conversations that need to occur that don't. And that's where we have the polarities, that's where we get the conflict, that's where we have the tension. There's one client right now that's coming to mind that just, there's been so much damage in the relationship that both parties are actually at the point where they're not willing to even come back to the table. And I don't think that's unnormal. That's not uncommon.
Right. And even just acknowledging that is important.
Yeah.
Because if you keep trying and keep trying and keep trying.
What's your commitment?
Because then you're not getting anywhere. Yeah. There's no growth, there's no change, there's just kind of
hamster
wheel, right?
Yeah. I hate to keep bringing this forward. A lot of our work is around just vertical development. Like, how are we developing as people, as adults, as humans? How are we expanding our mindsets? How are we looking at things with different lenses? How are we opening our perspectives? And this conversation is to, your point, if we can't come to the discussions from that place, then the discussion doesn't become fruitful.
And don't want to re-engage in it.
And that becomes part of our lived experience. Then we take that experience and we hold it into all of the other experiences that we have against people who haven't even been a part of that.
Right. Well, you're making me think about if we stick with vertical development for just a second and think about how we're handling different perspectives and so much complexity. Conversations are complicated. They're coming from multiple different opinions, different lived experiences, a physiologic response, a biological response, like all of this, right? And so as leaders, we're trying to hold this complexity. And, it's my 13-year-old asked me what we were talking about today, and I told him, and I gave him an example, and he was like, how do you do that? And I said, well, the example, right?
It's like, oh, no, let's just avoid that.
I mean, that's what most people say is you just avoid it. We don't talk about it.
We go silent.
We go silent. And if you, the way I described it to him is you have a CEO of a company who believes this, and you are a leader who believes this, and you've got employees that you're influencing change with and holding the space for and creating safety for, because you're trying to do one mission. And if there's not alignment between what the ultimate leader of this organization is saying and the people who have to be safe enough to do their work and creative and all of that, then your job as the leader is to hold that complexity and figure out how to navigate that conversation. And that's when he looked at me like,
and how do you do that?
What's the answer?
Yeah.
That's a good question. We can talk about that. We could solve that problem.
For whatever reason, what you share brings up this whole notion too of, as individuals, we begin to choose places, workplaces, environments that we are safe, we are comfortable, we are accepted, we feel belonging, that align with our values, which I would absolutely encourage. But at the same time, the more we do that, the more we're actually isolating from each other and deepening the divide that we're experiencing. So it really is I don't even know how to describe it, but it's something.
Well, I feel like you're speaking to how we've done it in the past in terms of not talking about it. So I can stay in this organization, I can keep my stories hidden, I can keep my identity out of it, I'm completely compartmentalized. And then now we've shifted to, I'm not willing to be compartmentalized. And so I need to be in an organization that supports and sees me. So then do we just now have a constant turnover because we have to keep leaving? Do we just keep leaving? Or can we get to a point where we're safe in any environment?
And that requires leadership shifts and culture shifts and organizational shifts.
Having leaders understand that they have to hold that, I guess, relational capacity, emotional capacity.
Great way of saying it.
To be able to not have to solve every problem or to take either side, but to be able to hold both employees or a group of employees and have them feel as if I can listen and I'm not going to decide. We have some boundaries here. We're going to contain this. We're going to connect with each other about this. But our whole is, we have to get some work done. And I'm not asking you to put aside what's happening. because if you do that, then you're not going to be productive.
Yeah.
You're not going to be effective. We're not going to have good relationships, all those things. But employees need to know that that leader hears all sides, is not going to pick sides, but be able to hold that tension, and that they can be comfortable with the fact that they know that that person has the skills to be able to do that.
And I think sometimes when we go back to the fear piece, where we have this perception that we have to do it in the group or with the team. And I think even if a leader would just have just a beautiful open one-on-one conversation with someone where they could show up in that dialogue, there starts to be a wall broken, a barrier, a safety that gets created that they can just be in that one relationship for that moment. I'm curious because you've worked with a number of clients with us and others where you've been in a team session doing something very teamy, like personality assessments or something, and then suddenly there's enough safety created that someone feels like they can bring forward an identity and disclose that hasn't existed before. And sometimes they're surprised by the openness of the group, and sometimes not. So I'd be curious if there's any of that feels comfortable sharing today.
Well, first I want to acknowledge that as I said disclose, I wish I wouldn't have said disclose.
Okay.
Because I do feel like in these settings, I don't want it to feel like a disclosure, right? I want it to just feel like this is an opportunity to be who I am. But in these settings, there's this opportunity where there's this safety, and then all of a sudden there's a sharing of something that impacts the team that they maybe have already known, but now we have a language for it and an ability to support.
Yeah, a container to...
Yes. Like now I know. And watching the team rally around, yes, I see you, I hear you. How do we move forward?
Yeah.
And it's not a big deal, but there's some safety.
Yeah, it's not a big deal, but it's a big deal. Yeah,
it's a really big deal.
I love the differentiation around disclosure, because I think you're right. I think we wouldn't want it to ever feel that way. But my guess is to the people that are bringing that forward, it probably does feel like a disclosure. Would you think or no?
Yeah,
it's interesting that I think as we have changed, the workplaces have changed. It made me think about even that word disclosure, right? Over the years, what we have disclosed about so many charged kinds of, I keep saying charged, but so many difficult, challenging conversations, disclosing like sexual abuse or disclosing domestic violence and disclosing, like that is what to me it's been linked to, that people are, because everything was kept here. And I think about the generations before us, my mother's generation and our grandparents, that everything we didn't disclose anything outside of the family.
Yeah. And maybe even inside the family.
Inside the family. Right. Both. Yeah. Right. And so to even go to a work environment where you're not disclosing inside your own family, of course you had to be silent, not share. Well, and I grew up with that. My mom would always say, what happens in this house, it happens in this house, and you may not share it outside this house.
Otherwise you're violating a family agreement.
Yes. And I took that true to heart. And with that, I, went to schools and not shared things that were happening in our house. My mom was a single parent, all those things. But then I couldn't fully show up in who I am. And then you learn that in the workplace.
Yeah.
And we have all types of folks coming with that closed-mindedness, and because they've been taught that I can't disclose or I can't share because you're going to know too much of me. You're going to know too much of my business.
What about the notion of what you said? Like, work is work. It's not about personal. Your personal stuff stays at home. What about that? What if we just all did that?
We would not have innovation or creativity or our best selves.
Because we can't be in a relationship at that point. Because I think that's still a mindset that is probably really common. And maybe even more so now because of the difficulty in these conversations. It's like, okay, then let's just keep it at home.
Well, I think relationship is a really key component of that. Yeah. Because even in what you were saying about what happens at home stays at home, it was just validating and relatable for me, for you and I to have that same language in totally different households, different environments, different lived experiences, all of that, right? Yes. So when in relationship at work, that's where the energy comes from. Yes. And if people are holding back big stories, like you said, like I'm getting married, I can't talk about that. I'm having a baby, I can't talk about how I got pregnant. Do you know what I mean? Like then we have this gap in the ability to share a new lived experience to change our story.
And we know that these are the commonalities that make us better together, and it allows us to be in relationships. We can share some of those pieces and parts, and it's not like open disclosure. It's not it's not like we just share everything with everybody all the time. Like we discern, but I get the point of the importance of it. Absolutely, yeah.
And when I think about the generations in work, families, right? We have our younger folks who everything has been out there on social media. They've shared everything about their lives, but they've shared so much. Yeah. I mean, you could just go and say, I'm going to find out everything I want about Kristen before I even meet her. Right?
Yeah.
And that's such a different mindset than the mindset that was instilled in me.
Yeah.
So then you bring that to a workplace where somebody can share everything about who they are. And then you have people of my generation who are like, no, that's off limits in a work environment. Yes. How dare you bring your political views, your social views into this space? We do not talk about it here.
Yeah.
That's where tension comes.
And I always think about it from the psychological safety lens, that there's psychological safety that gets created so I feel comfortable sharing my story, my lived experience, whatever part of that it is. But there's also an obligation of the people around me to be able to hold that. And I think there's not a lot of capacity sometimes for others to hold that story. Or there's different levels of capacity to hold that story. So you might have somebody that can hold it really well and someone else that just can't. So then that has implications as well.
Well, there's also honoring the group to be able to hold the story. So in the examples that we were just talking about where doing this work and this personality work and something comes out, holding it back actually keeps the other people present from being able to show up in their giving, serving selves to be able to hold that space and show up for the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because if the group, you're almost robbing them of the opportunity for their own growth and their own ability to support the person in those conversations. I'm thinking this notion of polarity mapping, where on the one hand, we've got, don't talk about it in the workplace, stay silent. On the other hand, we're like, let's talk about it, let's get out in the open. And there's got to be some middle ground. So when we do polarity mapping, we look and say, okay, what are the strengths of being on this side of the continuum? So what are the strengths of just holding it in and not speaking it? There's definitely gifts from that. And then where do we know that we're doing too much of that it's causing problems? And then you do the same for the other. What are the strengths of just getting it all out there? And then when do we know we're doing too much? And then it allows us to stay in the right place on the continuum without having to be at either one of those polarities, which I think is where we're at now, probably more so on the one polarity of keeping it silent. So let me ask this question. Do you think that leaders are equipped or kind of even willing to hold this emotional complexity that these kinds of conversations require? I worry that sometimes leaders can't even hold the complexity of a more simple conflict. And that's not a judgment. It's just conflict is difficult. It's a difficult thing. And this then layers on a whole different level of complexity with conflict or with potential, with perceived conflict. Because I think that's the fear, right? Is that we're going to have a conflict here. So, and maybe the next question as I'm sitting here gabbing is what skills do leaders actually even need to be able to hold these conversations in a way that isn't harmful, that doesn't even do more harm?
One of the things that I really have been seeing since doing these restorative conversations, people are afraid of conflict. And the more that we can embrace that we're going to have conflict in life,
normalize
normalize it, the better equipped leaders are to handle conflict.
Yeah.
Just understand it's going to be there. There's going to be conflict. And as we were talking earlier, when people talk about, well, this is your work family, and we kind of laughed about that. And I think, Kristen, one of you said something about, no, if you could see, there's an example, no, if you could see my family, well, you could see my family, how we handle conflict. Everybody's coming with this experience with conflict from their families, and they're bringing it forward into the workplace. And so some people really are. We cannot have conflict because what conflict looked like in my house it was ugly, it was messy, it was all those, while other people were like, we fought all the time. We said what we need to say, we got it out, and it was over.
Or we didn't. We just you don't talk about it.
Right. But the fact was there was conflict. So
there always is. You're right. Yeah.
So how do you normalize it?
Yeah.
And I think the best leaders are leaders who recognize that and then create a culture right away that says, look, we're going to have conflict. Let's talk first about how we are going to handle this conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the ways that you've handled conflict? How can we come together, and how is this organization going to handle what's inevitably going to come up?
And how to not lead it, how to actually close the loop on it so that you're not left with some of that rawness that sometimes it can create. And I think there's probably benefit, and we do this in our work, where you create some parameters around how to have the conflict. Like, it doesn't just get to be open brawl. And we don't ask people to stay silent either. We ask them to share to their level of trust, but also that the group has to hold a container that's safe for some of those things to come forward.
I think the good leaders, the leaders that I've worked with that excel at this, they've done their own work. They've processed their lived experience. They understand how what's going on for them impacts other people. They understand the relationship management, the emotional intelligence of what's happening in here, so that they're managing their own emotional response also.
Yeah. You're right. It can never start anywhere but with self. So since we're talking about what good leaders do, when we think about strong leadership, when we have kind of these values clashes that are so fundamental for people, what do strong leaders do? I love that they have to do their own work. Absolutely. I think that there's accountability level that they have to place on their team members as well. Like, we all have to come to this with some level of accountability. But I'm curious what else you all see that strong leaders do. What makes a leader good at this?
I believe one of the other characteristics of a great leader is, and people say this all the time, but rarely do people do this, is be a good listener.
Yes.
And just hold the listening space. Not try to say, well, that happened to me, or when I was at my net, but just sit and listen and then paraphrase.
Non-judgmentally.
There's a curiosity that's pure. But truly trying to understand in an awe kind of way.
We see this with generational work, and I think when we talk about this, generations is part of these different lived experiences and these identities and so on. And we see a lot of judgment back and forth. And so if we could just listen with curiosity and not have the judgment, like, well, I did it this way and I turned out just fine, or whatever that. I mean, we hear these stories, right? I think that's a beautiful way to say, yes, this is the emotional capability that a leader has to exhibit if they're going to be good at this conversation and holding the space for these things to happen.
Well, there's rule number 1, right? Which is from verbal judo. That's where I've heard it, is you just don't take it personally. Rule number 1, don't take it personally.
For agreements. Right. Don't think otherwise as well. Yeah.
Right. So if you can start from that place, do your own work, manage your own emotional reaction, and don't take it personally. And see the landscape of what you're trying to hold.
So since you brought that up, I think it's probably important just to kind of pause, because the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, is that right? One of them, don't take it personally. The other one is be impeccable with your words. If we could actually really pause and recognize the power of what we say. You stopped us when we said the one word. Now I can't remember what it was.
Oh, disclosure.
Disclosure, yeah. Right. Can we actually pause and say, oh, that's not actually the word that is right for what I'm trying to convey. If we can get really impeccable with what we say and how we say it, that feels like it could have a lot of impact as well.
I think one of the other things to go along with this is that because we live in a society that's always fix it fast. So fix it and then fix it fast.
Yeah.
So a good leader realizes that some things you are not going to be able to fix. And it's not going to be a fast fix.
Yeah.
So slow down. I know we've got things to do. But if these relationships are important, the connections of the employees, because it's going to lead to employees who stay, who feel like they belong, who feel connected, all of those things, you're going to have to give some time.
Yeah.
And that means, and you may not be able to solve it, and it's okay. But how do you hold that and feel like, oh, I'm terrible at this, I suck at this.
Or I hear a lot of times, I'm not a therapist, that's not my job. And I don't think you have to be a therapist to be in relationship, in a good, healthy relationship with your people. Right. We do that with our children, with our spouses, with our, all the people in our lives, and we're not therapists necessarily. So,
some burnout kind of pieces are coming up for me.
Mhm.
Like engagement and burnout and in relationship. Because we know that the burnout happens when we're not respected, we don't have that sense of belonging. And so when you were talking about the amount of time that it takes, like even if it can't be fixed, you're still cultivating this respect or a language or a container that it's okay, that I think detracts from that. It increases engagement for sure. I don't know for sure how far it takes away from burnout. I think of them as opposites. The parts of burnout, the opposite of that is engagement, and we're not going to get good results if we don't have good relationships. Not in a sustainable way.
What's striking me too is DEI has become a little bit of a trigger word, and yet it's not about DEI, it's about relationships. Like you bring it straight down to that level, and it's about how do we respect people for whatever that is and looks like, and there's those pieces, and then how do we create relationships that matter.
Yeah, that one thing about the word DEI, it really is, to me, it's about humanity. How do we show up in humanity with each other? And when I think about how kind of DEI has been kind of demonized, really it's the words that no one really ever understands: diversity, equity, inclusion.
Yeah.
To me, it's all about humanity work. How do we connect to each other as human beings on this? I know race and identity are huge, very huge pieces of who I am. I'm not going to say that. And I want you to recognize my humanity.
Yeah.
I want you to recognize that I'm deserving of dignity and respect and belonging. And that's what true, really DEI work is about. Is having people show up in their truest form of what makes them who they are. So that they can be they're the best that they can be.
And where do we have the recognition that the individualness of all of our experiences that incorporate all of the things that you just described, but it's that individuality that creates diversity, for lack of a better word, in how we can address problems and be creative and handle situations, and the humanity piece is critical. Do you think it's more difficult in more diverse work environments, or do you think it's easier when we have higher levels of diversity to navigate these kind of conversations? Like, is it easier when we have lots of similarities, or does the diversity actually support our ability to be in these dialogues more holistically?
I think the diversity, at least in the teams that I've worked with, the diversity offers a different kind of creativity, because we all have a different kind of solution based on the experiences that we've had, and culturally, how we've learned, who we've learned them from, our different styles of bringing it. I mean, I'm thinking even of like how we make things, right? Like as makers, if we had 5 different people with different diverse kinds of backgrounds, what we even call making is a different thing, right? So how I learned to sew and how you learn to sew, and if you learn to sew, like we all have, and I could learn something, hopefully, right? I mean, I can sew a few things. My mom tried. I did not have the patience for that.
I messed up your metaphor though. Keep going.
Well, not really though, because you're talking about like someone at the table doesn't know how.
Yeah.
And someone needs to know.
Someone might have a better way, or
a better way, or a different way, or a more efficient way, right? And if we can be safe enough to get open and creative, and when the stress is too high, we're not intuitive, and so then we aren't leaning in to, or even open to learning something new. So if we want to move faster, then and better, then we need different perspectives. The groups that I've worked with that seemed more homogenous get a little stuck in where to go from where they are.
I would agree. I think that the more homogeneous the population, the more I don't want to use the word stuck again, but the more isolated their experiences are, and then the lack of let's take some risks. Let's do something different. It becomes this has always worked for people that look like us,
Yeah.
it's going to continue to work, right?
You only know what you know.
Right.
Yeah.
You only know what you know. And I think that the more diverse the workplace is, I just think about just even raising your children, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have 5,
Mm-hmm.
you have 2, right? I have 4. And if we raised our children exactly the same,
Yeah. Or even our 2 or 4, however many are, raised the same.
they're different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They come from us, but they are not exactly the same. And we never say, well, I'm going to treat this one exactly the same.
They all need
But they all need something different.
Right.
And that's what I see when we talk about equity, or, especially around equity, is people are saying, well, everybody should get the same thing.
Oh.
We don't do it in our own families.
Yeah.
We don't do it with our own kids. We would damage our kids
Right.
Yeah.
if we gave them exactly the same and not what they
Amazing.
need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's what I like about even raising my kids. My kids are all different,
Yeah.
and they bring this wealth of creativity and innovation and relationship and all of that because they are so different. And it makes it fun and joyful.
And it changes you.
Mm-hmm.
It changes you because
Yes.
of how different they are too. And over time, you become a different parent. They're different.
Yeah, and you've made that statement a couple times, and it's probably just, again, worth highlighting and underlining is we learn and grow in relationship with each other.
Mhm.
Let's talk about, we've had such rich philosophical conversation or theoretical or some of those pieces. Let's get really clear about what leaders are seeing in the workplace. We can talk about this, and we can share all of these perspectives, and this is really hard. We even struggle in our own personal lives and in our professional lives doing this work. And I think I shared with you an example. I've been on our team where we had a little bit of tension, and my inclination was like, oh, no, let's not talk about this. So I think it's such a natural human reaction. So what are leaders actually seeing in the workplace? What is happening in the workplace that is causing them to have to pull back or make this choice?
Well, it's totally personal to me, and what I'm seeing and hearing from my friends is, so as a Black woman, there's been, in the news, it's been said 300,000. It's closer to like 500,000 Black women have left and been forced out of the workplace. And so for me, what leaders are really working with is that I'm hearing a lot of Black women talk about in their workplaces not being able to really share what the experience is like to be the only ones, or to have certain political views, or to even talk about having a voice in worried about losing their jobs because they're considered aggressive or not following what leadership looks like in a lot of places, which is white male and patriarchy and all those things. So that is one of the things that I think in many places are struggling with. And now, especially if you don't have a DEI department or equity department or anything like that, where do people go to find affinities?
Or even employee resource groups are getting a little more frowned upon.
And I would say that too, as we talk about the queer community as well, the lack of spaces where, we're having laws passed around, just banning and isolating and not even being able to identify. So I think that for sure I've heard is coming up in workspaces too.
Yeah.
Those are the real issues for employees in spaces.
So then that piece of the experience is just, as a leader, I will experience my employees withdrawing, not sharing, staying silent, not being able to bring things forward. And then I think on the other side, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is a little bit more of this aggressive clashing, where people are bringing forward their perspectives and they're in different sides, and they're creating just really aggressive conflict.
Yeah.
And leaders are like, whoa!
Right. There's an activist, pacifist kind of approach, right? Like we have our own personalities to some of that. And even when it's activist, it gets labeled as disengaged.
Yeah.
Same as passive or withdrawing or silencing, right? So the leaders are seeing a disengaged organization or body of people who they're trying to activate to do something positive, and they're not getting momentum because there's not as much loyalty to what they're trying to accomplish.
What role does courage play in any of this, either on the part of the employer or on the part of the leader?
I think you have to be really courageous as a leader these days.
Because hard things are hard. We were talking a little bit about that.
Hard things are hard. And when you think about these, you were asking for specific examples. Certainly the Palestinian and Jewish.
Yeah.
Those are really hard conversations to have in a workplace, dealing with identity. And so to be able to stand and not choose sides, but be able to hold that conversation, that's a really difficult conversation to hold when you have employees that identify in both groups. How do you stand in courage and say, okay, can we get to the humanity of this conflict, that there is harm? And even as I say this, my voice trembles because there's harm on both sides.
Yeah.
And when you say that, it's almost like people, well, what are you saying? That harm is bigger than this harm?
Yeah.
No, it's harm.
Yeah.
There are people dying. There's humanity at stake. And how do you as a leader just say that?
It's almost like we have to go deeper than the surface political issue. Air quotes.
Right.
Because until we go deeper, we actually don't create the commonality. We don't get to the relationship level, to the humanity level that is actually required if we're going to navigate these pieces well. And I think too, we can't even manage difficult conflict sometimes. And I say we everybody. No, I don't think anybody is overly, even skilled people have struggles with managing it. So then you pile on the intensity of these kinds of issues, and it's just incredibly difficult.
I was feeling when we're talking about courage and having the difficult conversations, I wonder how to do that, like if leaders are being called to do that. I think if we can remember who you're being called to do it for, sometimes you can stand in courage for other people different than you can for yourself. And so I'm thinking about even in healthcare.
And I almost want to pause there. Say that one more time. We can stand
in courage for other people different than we can stand in courage for ourselves. And so if we can anchor into, this isn't about me, this is about this group of people or people, humanity, and stand for that. And I'm thinking about even healthcare or people, if people can't express who they are, what they need, their differences, whether it's queer community or whether it's because I'm culturally have not been allowed to share private things about myself, or maybe it's abuse, something like that, right? Like if I can't share with a healthcare provider, then I'm going to miss out on my healthcare. I might be at risk of disease. I might be at risk of being in an environment that's unhealthy. My access is limited. And so if I'm a leader being of courage for this group of people or all people, then I can hold that and have the hard conversations different than I maybe could for myself.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. What are we tolerating? I know that's a big open question.
I think we're tolerating harm to people's spirits, right?
Their wellness, their being,
wellness,
which is more important now than ever. Like this new generation is really shining a spotlight on burnout, on mental health, on things that we have swept under the rug as older generations for decades.
When I think about that, that's what I think about is when we tolerate harm, people's physical bodies are taking the brunt of that from stress, heart attacks. You can just go down the line of what stress causes. Its impact on the body, its impact on our mental health, our emotional health. We're tolerating people not people, but we're tolerating drug abuse, right? Because as a way of coping, alcoholism, we're tolerating that people are not well. And when people are not well, we hear it, hurt people, right?
Say that one more time.
Hurt people. And so
I think you said it perfectly. Right. It's encapsulated. I think we're tolerating outcomes at the expense of people.
And then I even question sometimes if we could get better outcomes if we weren't doing it at the expense of people.
Right.
Like we're achieving outcomes. They might even be good outcomes, but what more could we do if we were to tend to the human side?
I'm working with an organization right now that is shifting and they have language around productivity is really not, it's not about the measure. It's about how we're being together in a way that we're evoking creativity and each other in order to be sustainable, not measuring a productive outcome.
Yeah. How many widgets are we putting out there?
Exactly. But if that's what we're measuring, then we're tolerating the stress, the pain, the lack of humanity.
And if we're not conscious about what we're tolerating, we promote it. And it just magnifies. I feel like we had such rich discussion before we came into this. We had some intense, rich discussion in this time. And I have to believe that when we turn the camera off, we're going to continue to have some really rich discussion. So is there anything else that you all have thought about in preparation for this, or that we've talked about that you want to share that feels just important for the audience to know in light of this?
Well, I think we, offline, we had a quick conversation about attunement.
Yeah.
And I think it warrants some discussion about, for leaders and, for the general population, like we're always sizing it up. We're attuned to cues, to signals, what's safe, what's not safe, what's promoted, what's tolerated, by the language that we use, by signage that we use, by, we make assumptions, whether or not we're right or wrong, before we're willing to risk. And I think as leaders, we have to be really conscious about how we're setting the tone.
It's a beautiful point, because we make assumptions based on things that don't even seem like they would be assumptions. On what the car someone drives, or any number of things. We visualize it, automatically make an assumption that may or may not be correct.
I want to go back to something Kristen said earlier about productivity. And I had written down workplaces are human systems, not productivity systems. But I think we can't say that enough, that we can't separate people at work from their human selves. And so long we've done that. And when we do that, again, we just go back to over and over again. We're not, when people have to carry and suppress their grief, their trauma, all of the things, their uncertainty, it really impacts their ability to be productive in a system. It impacts people's ability to just show up and just be in connection with one another. And that is what is happening in our society. It's become so easy to be divisive and not to be connected. And workplaces have to be those spaces where we have enough, AI already. We have a lot of virtual meetings, but to be in space with each other, we can't lose that connection, that human connection. So just going back to our workplaces, it's almost human-centered.
Can our workplaces right now, sometimes our workplaces are a reflection of our society, and we can actually reverse that. Well, let me leave everyone just with an incredible amount of gratitude for the conversation. Not an easy one to step into, and what I will share, and I will often share this with our audience as we go through these podcasts, is the things that we share, we may or may not agree with. You all might leave the room today and have said something that all of a sudden you're like, I actually don't even agree with what I said. So I want to just let the audience know that that's okay. It's not about agreement. Hold everything lightly. We don't have to judge so quickly anything. So there might have been something said and you're like, that's just dumb, or I don't agree with that. And you can feel that, but I would just encourage you to loosen your judgment on pieces, because the more we can think about things a little bit differently, the more then we can embrace potentially some different perspectives. So thank you both for your time and your commitment to a difficult topic. Both Stacey and Kristen consult with Innovative Connections, and we're just really, really blessed to have your expertise and commitment on the team. So thank you for that as well. So as we kind of wrap up this topic, and thank you for your participation today, one of the things we want to leave you with is just a closing question for you to contemplate. And that question for this topic is, where in the workplace are you choosing comfort over courage? And what is that decision costing you? If you want to participate in the conversation, feel free to leave a comment below. If this topic continues to resonate with you and you have interest in it, please register to join us for a free webinar that Stacey and I will be delivering on August 25th at noon Central Time. It's really going to be an opportunity for us to share with you some more practical tips and tricks. Today's conversation was a little more theoretical, philosophical, and the webinar will help us kind of get into what keeps leaders from having these conversations, and are there ways that we can make sure that we're having these dialogues in the workplace in a way that is supportive of everyone. So one of the models we'll share with you is called Acknowledge, Connect, and Guide. And we'll share some language and some other just some other pieces of information that might be helpful for you as you're navigating this really tough topic in the workplace. Please join Stacy and I for the webinar in August. Details will be posted below, and we really look forward to the opportunity to kind of delve into this a little more and kind of move from this theoretical piece to some more practical tips and tricks that we think will help you in your workplaces. So thanks for joining us. Like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next month.